Welcome back to the show. For today's episode, episode 5, I would like to discuss a particularly famous person who is mentioned in the book Thing of Beauty 4 times. One place in particular is page 155. It's a chapter titled Model War Zone. And it says, for several years, Gia had made it a habit of asking people she respected to recommend books she should read or movies she should see. She jotted the list down in her diaries and usually just got around to the movies. John Garfield was her favorite actor. Marilyn Monroe and Greta Garbo were her favorite actresses. Marilyn Monroe is mentioned 4 times in this book. I find that intriguing for maybe different reasons than most would. There's actually a quote from her mother saying that she always had this vision or whatever that Gia would become like Marilyn Monroe, would be a sex symbol, and would die young and tragically. You find it. It's on this page, 174. Let's see. If you're wondering how I find these things, you know how to use an index. You go back to the index in the back of the book. You look for the name of the person. You'll find it. Page 174. This is chapter 8. It's called Callback. It's the very end of the chapter. It's a quote from Gia's mother who says, "I knew how beautiful she was and how fragile she was. And I had this vision of her becoming this Marilyn Monroe type and becoming a sex symbol and dying a very tragic death young." Okay, so maybe there are some similarities there. However, what I see is a little different. I recently bought this book that's called The Girl, and the subtitle is Marilyn Monroe, The 7-Year Itch and the Birth of an Unlikely Feminist. It was written by Michelle Morgan. It talks about Marilyn Monroe as being someone who tried to better herself, who was doing the same thing, was watching all these different movies and reading all these different books and trying to educate herself, trying to get away from the dumb blonde image that had been forced upon her, as she felt. So if there is a similarity between Gia and Marilyn Monroe, I hope that it's this more than the sex symbol or the tragic death part. Those could be aligned if you so choose, but I would prefer this. There's a quote from this book about Marilyn Monroe that says, it was an interview with Marilyn Monroe that says, "I act when I'm posing," she explained, "just as hard as I do when I'm playing a role in front of a movie camera. I think of something for each pose, so I'll have the right expression." This is Marilyn Monroe explaining how she personally acted. It was for her like posing in front of a camera when she was a model, briefly. She says, "I would think of something so that I would have the right expression on my face. Same way as I do when I'm acting." Why is this important? Well, if you do a quick search here on YouTube, you will find some clips from an interview that Gia did for 2020. And the interviewer asks her about why she sort of became a different person in front of the camera. He's all like, excuse me, "You walked in here one person, and once you got in front of the camera, you became a different person." And he asked her, like, how does that happen? And she basically explains to him that it's what I do. It's my job. I'm supposed to become whatever needs to be for that image, for that picture. And then he kind of retorts back to her and he says, "Well, what are you? What are you projecting?" And she says to him, "Well, whatever your eyes want to see." It's a brilliant response. It's absolutely a brilliant response. And I think there's some of this same understanding that I just read from Marilyn Monroe that Gia had as well. She was portraying a character. She was creating an image. and it was whatever the audience needed or wanted to see. Maybe she couldn't articulate it that well. Maybe she wasn't a genius and very well spoken, but still, I think she understood it. On some level, I think she understood it, and I think it's revealed in that. So I just wanted to highlight that quickly and make this quick episode. Is she like Marilyn Monroe? Maybe. I hope it's in this sense, that she was an intelligent person. Maybe not in a traditionally intelligent, in a way that we would define intelligence as a traditional definition. You know, she wasn't like a straight A student or something like that. But yet she understood the power of an image. She understood creating a character, creating a mood for the audience to connect with and to visualize and receive. You know, I think she understood that. And I think that Marilyn Monroe understood that very well as well. She was typecast too often as the dumb blonde and the quote-unquote sex pot. They didn't really give her credit for this intelligence that she did have, I would argue. I know there's a lot of other people out there that would argue the same thing. That's why I bought this book. That she was an unlikely feminist. She was actually a very intelligent person who lived in a time when women were discriminated against. In a male-dominated industry, women were discriminated against. She didn't seek to be a feminist. It just sort of happened that way because she was very strong in her belief and wanted to break out of the traditional boxes that have been set for what a woman should be and what a woman should do. And that's another way that people could compare Gia to Marilyn Monroe. She did something similar to that. She wasn't a traditional model. In fact, she said she never really wanted to do that in the first place. It was just something that came easy. Obviously, you make a lot of money. So, I'll close with that. I just thought it was an interesting topic, and there are some similarities. But I hope that we look on the brighter side and not so much on the tragic, like dying young side. It is a fact, but I would hope people listening to this don't focus on that too much, because there's so much else. There's so much more to Marilyn Monroe's story and to Gia's story. So much more than them just dying young and tragically. Okay, so that's my hope. That's actually my hope for this entire series. All right, so thank you for listening, and I hope that you stick around for more.